So along those lines, selective attention leads to positive opposites in how this actually looks by talking. So, so not only are we going to pay attention to a kid by accident if they're acting out, we may even say it in a way that focuses on the negative. So we may say something like, stop talking, don't make a mess, leave him or her alone when a child is bothering another child. So what we want to try and train ourselves to do is to first stop and think about how we're going to say something. And then we want to think of the opposite behavior that is incompatible with the current behavior and also positive, right? And actually in your folders, which I'm going to kind of give you as gifts from our manual, on the right side you will have 3 pages. You have a double-sided sheet of examples of positive opposites, which includes how to ignore negative ones and how to phrase them in the positive. And if they're acronyms you don't understand, it's from our specialized therapy here, PCIT. So don't worry about that. The second page is like a worksheet. Maybe we'll have time, but I'll skip it for now, of practicing flipping these things into positive opposites. And finally, from Topics Magazine, Hot Off the Press, is an article that I just wrote that kind of gives some examples of how to do this, and goes into more in depth. So you can take that home and read it to kind of refresh your memory. I'll just point out that one thing from the article I think is kind of neat is that if you pay attention while you walk around town, while you commute and such, you'll notice that city signs, right, municipality signs, are actually usually phrased in positive opposites, right? So I have some examples here. So for instance, right, so when you're stepping off the train, right, the subway, what does the yellow strip on the floor say? Stand back, right? So stand back instead of, like, it tells you what to do. Or I was thinking of mind the gap, right? Mind the gap. Also, please stay seated on the bus. Instead of saying don't stand, right? Please give up your seat to an elderly or disabled person instead of, don't be a jerk. And buckle your seatbelt, please curb your dog. Around Brooklyn, I see a lot of signs that say drive like your kids live here, right? So these are all things that you should do as opposed to what you shouldn't do. And in addition to just working better, they just add positivity into your life and interactions. It's much nicer way to talk with things like stop, don't, no, bad. That just could be toxic in a home environment. And the final reason why this is an important skill is it reminds the other person what you actually want them to do. Sometimes kids especially don't really know what you mean when you say don't make a mess or leave him alone. They may know what they're doing is bad, but they don't know how to replace it with something else. So saying the positive opposite, like curb your dog, kind of tells you, or drive like your kids live here, kind of tells you this is how I should do it. So let's just practice with these 3 over here. So just yell it out. Stop talking instead could be said as, what's the opposite?
Speak quietly.
Good. Please speak quietly, or just say quietly, don't make a mess. Put your things away. Leave her alone is keep your hands to yourself. I wrote this for kids, but like I feel like today's day and age, this could be like for adults as well. Everything that's going on in the media, but like leave her alone. Instead, keep your hands to yourself. Okay, so there's a worksheet. This is really, really tough to change. This is a really, really tough skill because we're just programmed to speak more than negative. But if you could catch yourself, if you could work on it at home when you're less stressed and make it more of a habit, it will be more natural to you. As an example, I have a story of how it could just work for yourself to manage anxiety and depression. I'll share a story about a good friend of mine who was sick in the hospital, and I went to visit him a lot, and he wasn't doing well, so I was very nervous. And on the drive home, every time when I left the hospital, I had this mantra in my head that I kept repeating, while I was davening and such: "Don't die." I just kept saying, like, "Please don't die, please don't die, please don't die," while I was driving home. And it wasn't helping. I would get more upset and more worked up, and I feel like I could will him to be alive, but it wasn't working. So I called a friend of mine who's also a psychologist, really smart guy. We're chatting about, our friend who's in the hospital, and I said, I keep saying over and over in my head, don't die. So he said, and it's not working, it's making me feel worse. So he said, well, you keep saying the word die, right? You keep repeating like don't, but you also keep repeating die, which is like putting this image in your head of your friend dying, and you're actually imagining it as opposed to saying it. So that was actually really good insight. And when we talk to kids, even though we're saying don't pee on the floor, which is something I had to say to a kid one time, don't pee on the floor, sometimes kids, they hear the don't, but they also hear the thing that you're telling them not to do, which may actually make them more likely to do it, right? Which is what he proceeded to do. It wasn't my own kid, it was a kid in a camp who peed right on the floor. And then my supervisor kind of coached me, he said, don't pee on the floor. This kid had an oppositional problem. He likes to disobey and defy adults. You said don't, he said yes. So instead you could say, pee in the toilet, whatever. But so when I was saying don't die over and over again, what would help instead? Which my friend kind of gave me the other mantra. What's the opposite of don't die?
Stay alive.
Stay alive, right? So instead of saying don't die over and over again, I switch it to stay alive. And guess what happened to my mood and to my thoughts and everything like that, right? It was a different image. It was stay alive instead of don't die. So not only for kids, not only for talking, but for people with anxiety and other things, the way we talk to ourselves in our head, right? The internal dialogue that we have is very important to catch that language. So I feel like I just brought the mood down a lot with that. So let's try something a little more, a little lighthearted. So everyone follow the instructions on the screen. Okay, so nobody thought about a blue elephant, right? Right? No one has a blue elephant in their head? Right? Okay, so what happened when you saw the phrase, do not think about a blue elephant? What happened in your mind?
I immediately envisioned a pink elephant.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. The opposite. And who ever thought about a blue elephant? Yeah? Immediately blue elephant kind of appeared in your head? But I said, do not think about a blue elephant. Didn't work, right? Okay. So it's thoughts, but I think the message is still the same.